Welcome to Muscles and Malarkey, a podcast about all things strength, fitness, and fun. I'm your host, Mary. Today, I want to explain some green flags and red flags when it comes to finding the right coach. What would be a good indication to get a coach? The first thing that came to my mind was if you want to compete in a specific lifting discipline, like powerlifting, weightlifting, bodybuilding, strongman, I think it is incredibly helpful to have a coach. A coach is someone who is going to give you real-time feedback. They're going to give you insight into your programming. They're going to give insight into your lifts, and they can also tweak your program to meet you where you're at. You do not have to have a coach, but in my opinion, if you are competing, they can kind of remind you of the bigger picture. Yes, you might be able to self-program, but what happens when there's a bump in the road? Are you equipped to navigate that? Because personally, it would be really nice to have another person to bounce off an idea with or get that perspective shift. So for me, with my history of my back sass, I can say I'm really frustrated right now because deadlifts aren't moving the way that I want them to. And my coach, my current coach, can say, hey, I've been through that. I can empathize with what you're feeling. I can also give you some knowledge and perspective to say that there is light at the end of the tunnel and you will get on the other side. Personally, if I didn't have that outside perspective, I tend to go into that negative thought spiral of oh my God, my life is over. My powerlifting career is done. I'm an idiot. What am I doing? No, you don't need to go into the spiral. Just get a coach. I feel like the relationship with a coach is a more personal level. My coach knows about me and knows about what's going on in my daily life, how that might be affecting my training. Don't treat your coach like a therapist, but understand that there is a level of appropriate personalization that can happen with a coach. They can remind you of how far you've progressed. I say this because a lot of times we get so caught up in what we didn't do that we don't recognize the work that we have done. Today, I had a top deadlift double at 265 pounds. Now, past ego Mary would be like, wow, 265 isn't that much. That's really not that big of weight. And current Mary, with some outside help, thanks Lord all quad Danny for some helpful reminders. It's objectively speaking, 265 pounds is a heavy ass weight. And if I think back to Mary in 2017, doing a 265 pound deadlift very smoothly with good form, I'd be like, whoa, that's really strong. I want to do that. So it's helping keep perspective and also reminding you that you have made a lot of progress and hit a lot of milestones. When I first started with my coach, I would send Jess my videos and I'd be like, oh, I know that XYZ wasn't right. I know I didn't pull the slack out. I know that I didn't pause that long enough. And she would have to remind me, can you please let me nitpick for you? Don't nitpick for me. Let me be the one to judge and critique your lifting videos. She took that burden off of my shoulders. I didn't have to expend that mental energy in dissecting and analyzing my lifting videos to be like, how can I do this better? How can I be more efficient? How can my form improve? It's nice to have someone say hey, that was a really good job. Hey, that looked really good. Hey, externally rotate your shoulder. I have had times where I will freak out over stupid shit. Oh my God, my belt isn't fitting right. Oh my God, that weight felt super heavy. Oh my God, Bulgarian split squats are going to kill me. And your coach can remind you, it's one not so great day. We need to look at the big picture. We need to look week by week. And we need to look at how you are performing over the span of many workouts. And then they will also remind you that Bulgarian split squats are good for you and you should probably stop bitching about it. Yeah. If your limiting factor in being consistent with the gym is not holding yourself accountable and not having that self-accountability, having an outside person that they can kind of hold you accountable in a way, I think that is helpful. If somebody does not need outside accountability, they don't take themselves super seriously, they're not like, I have two wolves inside me and I need to be the best fucking powerlifter there ever fucking was. Yeah, if you're not that kind of person, then I think you'd be fine. There are people that I know that have self-coached their entire lifting career. It takes a little bit more effort on your part, but there are so many resources out there, YouTube especially, that can teach you how to program for yourself. Hearing all of this ranting and rambling, you may be wondering, okay, well, that's awesome, Mary, but how do I know if a coach is good or not? Well, I'm so happy you asked, listener, because we should talk about some green flags. Green flags meaning things that coaches demonstrate that would indicate you should hire them. This might be a bit of a hot take, but I think how somebody presents themselves on social media can be a bit of an indication of how they are as a coach. A green flag would be going to somebody's, let's go with Instagram. As you guys may have noticed, Instagram is like my main social media. So like I get a lot of my examples from that. But if I go to somebody's page and they have a lot of lifting videos, like they're going through and talking about their lifting experience and, oh, here's my deadlift day. Oh, here's my upper body day. Here's my secondary bench. Here's my squat day. I can look at that and be like, okay, this person walks the walk. Like they know, I know that what they are putting me through, they are putting themselves through. Does that make sense? Like, I don't mean if you go on there and somebody has like booty pics and all and you know, stuff like that they're like a bad person by any means. But I think if you see somebody doing or participating in the thing that, you know, you want their services of, I think it makes sense to see that type of content on their page, or at least showing that they can talk the talk, walk the walk, right? I think a big green flag is someone that has experience in the discipline that you are hiring them for. For example, you probably shouldn't hire a bodybuilding coach to peak you for a powerlifting meet, or vice versa. You probably don't want a marathon runner programming you for a golf tournament, right? Like, if you have specific types of goals, running, lifting, triathlons, CrossFit competitions, strongman competitions, you need someone with experience. You need someone who you know understands the process, has been through it themselves, or at least has some experience in that discipline. I'm not saying that someone has to be an elite level athlete in whatever discipline it is in order to coach it. But as I said, I don't know enough about running to coach running. So if someone approached me and they were like, hey, do you think you could program me for a 5K? I would say, no, I could program you for strength training if you'd like. See, the thing is, I don't think it's really a hot take to say that if you're coaching it, you better know about it. You may have the knowledge and capability to program for someone without having direct experience, but in my opinion, what you learn in a class or a certification program is not the same as working with real life people who aren't in perfectly controlled conditions. I can attest to this as an occupational therapist because there have been many, many times over the past 7 years that I've thought, wow, we did not learn that in OT school. If anybody wants to know, I have a great possum and a raccoon story from my home health days. Just let me know. Send me a message and be like, can you please tell this possum raccoon story? Because it's probably one of my favorites. But again, in my opinion, I think you learn about 10% of what you actually need to know in school, and then the rest you learn along the way. I think a second green flag is finding someone who demonstrates clear communication skills and they set appropriate expectations. There is a spectrum of types of coaches out there. You might get some coach that is available 24/7. You send them a message, they will get right back to you. That's pretty rare because coaches are people, just saying. But others might have certain hours of availability, and if you message them, before or after that window, they're not going to get to it until the next available time. And you might have some coaches that fall in between, right? You might have some that hey, we're going to do weekly check-ins. Don't talk to me during the week. And you might have someone who's please let me know every single thought you have that pops into your mind every single day. You never know. There's a spectrum. Remember, you are hiring someone for a service and they need to keep up their end of the bargain within reason. If you haven't had your program updated in 2 weeks, you haven't gotten any feedback from your coach on your lifting videos, and you are communicating with your coach within the boundaries that they have set, and they're not getting back to you or not doing these things, you should fire that coach. Obviously, communication has to be within reason, and it all depends on the kind of coach a person is. I have seen coaches who are very hands-on with their athletes, and they will communicate a lot. I have seen coaches who are focused on providing feedback, answering questions, and they keep the conversation focused on that and that alone. I promise you, unless you're OMG BFFs with your coach, they don't want to see hourly messages pop up from you on Instagram, WhatsApp, or text messages, okay? Respect boundaries that coaches have, but also find a coach that aligns with your communication style as well. Another green flag is finding someone who is flexible. As my coach says, we are human, we are not robots. We are allowed to have bad days, and there will be some sessions where things go to absolute shit, especially as you progress through this sport. Also, I'm going to have another side tangent. Your coach is a human. They have responsibilities outside of their job or their service that they're providing you. Okay, just like you. You don't just live in the gym. Please be kind to your coach. Don't be an asshat. All right? Communicate like an adult with them. And don't just yell at them or jump down their throats because they didn't give you an answer that you wanted. Because we're all doing the best that we can. Okay? It goes on both sides. Have a little empathy for your coach, and your coach should have some empathy for you. Capiche? Capiche. All right. Personally, I would steer clear of the all or nothing kinds of coaches. One of my coworkers told me about how she had worked with a trainer at one point who wanted her to work out 6 days a week. And if she didn't have enough or the right kind of progress, he would blame her and say it was her fault because she must not have stuck to the plan. Now, if you have that kind of coach, please do yourself a favor and run the other direction, because no coach should be blaming you for not having enough or the right kind of progress. If you have that kind of coach and that doesn't fall in line with the type of motivation or learning that you enjoy as a person, please do yourself a favor and run the other direction very quickly, because you don't deserve to have a coach who's going to talk down on you or blame you. Because remember, at the end of the day, it is a privilege to be able to walk into a gym and lift weights. As Coach Jess says, we get to do this. And I recommend trying to find a coach that can be empathetic, but also hold you accountable without all that shaming bullshit business, okay? Because side tangent, you may be the type of lifter who thrives off a hard-ass kind of coach. I can only speak from my perspective and experience, but in my opinion, having a coach who can empathize with you while also giving tough love is a good balance. But at the end of the day, the coach needs to work for you and how you learn and perform. Another green flag is a coach's resume, in a sense. I don't mean that they need to like hand you a cover letter and a resume in like the coaching application. But if you are asking someone to be your coach, you should do some research on them. Ask, people who are being coached by them currently. Maybe ask some people who used to work with them. Why aren't they working with them anymore? Get an idea of who you are working with and look out for what coaches have to offer. Do they have a history of successful clients? Do they have successful outcomes in their own discipline? Again, I'm not saying that someone needs to have a pro level total to be a powerlifting coach. However, if you've done 1 to 3 meets and you have been powerlifting for less than 5 years, then I would recommend taking the time to learn. And if you truly want to make this your passion, then you need to do your homework. If you can't explain to me the 3 different directions the muscle fibers run in the trapezius with an understanding of their origin, insertion, and innervation, then I'm going to ask you to sit down and learn. And I'm going to speak specifically to powerlifting in this moment because it is important as a coach to understand how bodies move and how different looking bodies move differently as well, because not everyone is a 21-year-old college student with a history of D1 athletics, okay? Okay. I get heated about this because I see people who do like a meet or 2 meets and maybe they're self-coached and they're like, yeah, man, I can do this. I can totally program for somebody. I can totally coach for somebody. And they don't understand the nuances that are associated with programming for somebody. It's a lot. You need to have a lot of knowledge. You need to understand how bodies move. You need to understand what muscles are being worked in a specific exercise. You need to be able to understand that so you can give cues to your clients. And hey, maybe that cue that you gave them doesn't work because for them, they're like, on a neuromuscular level, I can't execute that cue. And you need to be able to say, like, maybe if you say, pull the bar to your shins for deadlifts, and that doesn't quite work for somebody. But if you say, imagine someone is behind you trying to tickle your armpits, then they're able to get their lats engaged. You need to understand how bodies move. You need to understand how different bodies move. So that way you are giving the correct information to somebody and you don't hurt them, or you don't recommend or prescribe an exercise for them that is too much too soon. At the bare minimum, a coach should have a basic understanding of anatomy, physiology, and kinesiology, which leads me to my next point. A green flag, in my opinion, is a coach that is certified in personal training through some kind of accredited certification process. Within these certification programs, students have to learn about anatomy and physiology as well as cardiorespiratory function in relation to exercise. You as a consumer can have a little bit of reassurance in knowing that that person you're working with knows what they're talking about. They have had to pass a test. They have had to go through a program. Like, I am an ACE certified personal trainer and I had to go through like the self-driven every single chapter, taking the tests, signing up for the certification exam, and going somewhere to take a certification exam and passing it. If you have somebody who has that certification, you know that they have been vetted, essentially is what I'm saying. I'm not knocking the peeps who don't have that certification and their education is through the school of life experience and trial and error as well as hard knocks. To circle back to a previous point, you learn about 10% of what you need to know in school, and then the rest is through experience. I know of some very, very successful coaches that maybe don't have these letters after their name, but they've been in the lifting game for 10, 20, 30 years. That to me shows validity and shows that vetting process, which again goes back to my first point. If they have a resume of successful clients and they themselves have been very successful, like, I'm not saying they have to have every single one of these things, but having a couple of these things can kind of indicate, yeah, okay, like this is a good coach to work with. The biggest green flag of all is whether or not you jive with them on a personal level. This is someone who is going to be working with you pretty closely for X amount of time, whether that's for a meet prep, for hitting a certain goal, or maybe for the long haul, and your coach is going to have to deal with you for like ever, I guess. Sorry, Jess. Sorry, not sorry. At least you know I won't leave you. Never let go, Jack. Never let go. I think I have to move on to some red flags. My biggest red flag in my mind is people acting out of their scope of practice. I don't want you to fall into a trap of working with a truly unqualified person. There are charlatans out there on the internet, and they want your money. They are the type of coach, and I'm using that word loosely, who will give you the same workout as every other person that they're working with, while claiming that it's one-to-one personalized coaching. They'll send the generic, "You're doing great, sweaty," automated messages without giving actual feedback. And most likely, they'll ghost you and block you when you want your money back. You need someone who knows how to modify, adapt, or substitute exercises appropriately. What if your charlatan coach programs an exercise for you that causes significant pain? A good coach can modify exercises, they can listen to your feedback, and if there is a problem that is still occurring, they will refer appropriately. Coaches cannot diagnose you. I have actually had a patient in the clinic, their coach, whatever they like to call themselves, actually diagnosed that patient, and it was completely incorrect. If you have a problem that is so significant that you need to go to a doctor, you go to orthopedics, ortho will refer them to therapy. They are the specialists who are going to diagnose you with an issue. Then I, as the therapist, can treat it. I do my own evaluation, which entails range of motion measurements, provocative testing, trying to replicate symptoms, and I get a full history from people. Even with all of that, I still don't have the ability to formally diagnose you with a problem. That's why I get so annoyed by these pseudo coaches or trainers who act way out of their scope of practice. Me, as an occupational therapist, I can't diagnose you, and I have a fucking master's degree. Your online certification or your weekend class definitely does not qualify you to do that, Steve. So maybe you should stay in your scope of practice and not tell your client that they have lateral epicondylitis when they do not show any of the symptoms of that, and you just didn't know what to tell them, so you told them what you thought was close to that. The next red flag is the coach that does not listen to you. Like I said with the green flags, you need to have somebody who is going to communicate with you. If they don't, that's a red flag. Let's say an exercise isn't working for you and you tell that to your coach and their response is suck less or some shit, run away. That is not a good empathetic coach, all right? Next red flag. This is going to be more specific to in-person coaches because I think it's a red flag if you're doing in-person training with your coach, with your personal trainer, and they start putting their hands on you without asking you for your consent. That's a red flag. As an occupational therapist, I always ask every single person I evaluate or I work with, I'll say, is it okay if I touch your shoulder? Is it okay if I touch your wrist, etc.? Normally, these people are like, well, duh, I'm here for you to see me. But regardless, I always ask because I want my patient to know that they are in charge of what goes on in that session. It needs to be a collaborative effort, not me dictating to them. Like your coach, your trainer, they do not need to have their hands on your glutes during an RDL, all right? Because there are times where tactile feedback is great, like I use it too in the clinic, but consent is key in these instances. And if you have someone who is a little too touchy-feely or makes you feel any kind of way, gut feeling, no good, run. Fuck politeness in that instance. The next red flag, this is going to be like a little advanced for some people, but I still feel like it's important to say it because if you are new and you're starting strength training, you might run into a coach who is trying to push PEDs or performance enhancing drugs on you within like your first couple years of training. I am not an expert on PEDs, on cycles. I have no idea. I have no experience. Natty AF, what's up? However, I know enough to say that a 35-year-old female picking up a barbell for the first time should not be getting sauced up within the first 2 weeks of training. Or let's say you've been training for 5 years and you hit a plateau. The answer is not getting on gear. Okay, if your coach suggests that PEDs are the way to break a plateau, or they are a way to get you stronger faster, or some other magical reason that, they give you to use PEDs, you should run away from them. Just run away from them. Okay, unless they can give you a definitively good objective reason as to why you should get on gear, run away. And if someone wants to correct me on that and try and tell me that somebody who's been lifting for 2 weeks should absolutely get on gear, please slide into my DMs. Let's talk about the next red flag, inappropriate communication. As I said previously, unless you're like, OMG, BFFs with your coach, you're not going to talk to them every single day. If your coach is low-key sliding into your DMs and trying to form a romantic relationship with you, run the other way. Oh, you love me? Oh, you find me attractive? Oh, you think I'm beautiful? Okay, compliments are one thing. You hitting on me is a different thing. You telling me that you want to date me? Also pretty weird. Okay, at baseline, that is blurring the lines of what, in my opinion, should be a professional relationship with very clear boundaries. And that leads me to another point. If you have a coach that you are using for nutrition or physique, like bodybuilder kind of people, those coaches, those trainers, they need to act appropriately and professionally as well. Please do not be bullied or pressured into sending physique updates that make you feel uncomfortable. I have heard of stories, I've seen stories on social media of these predatory coaches who require completely nude physique updates so that they know exactly how you're looking. That ain't it. That is not it, fam. And I don't care how well-renowned a coach or a trainer is, that is predatory and extremely inappropriate. Final red flag that I want to end on. Cost. This is probably going to be a bit controversial, but I want to tell y'all about an experience that I had. I started working with a coach, and he was charging $165 a month. This person, after more than a year working with them, this person got more education, certifications, XYZ, and they increased their monthly charge to $200 a month. Okay. That was still within my budget. I mean, I was a young buck at that point in time and didn't have to pay a mortgage or utilities. So I could afford $200 a month. And after 3 years of working together, this coach decided to increase his prices again. This person was charging $275 a month with an additional $65 on top of that for a specified mobility program. And then the next level up, or the next tier up, cost $375. And then finally, the top tier was $495 a month, depending on the extras that you wanted. You might be saying, well, what's the difference in quality that you're getting from the base tier to tier 2, tier 3, whatever? So the difference between the base tier of what I was paying or getting grandfathered in at, I would get a 15-minute phone call once a month. I would still get my weekly programming updated. I'd still get feedback on my lifts. but that was the only like communication that I would really get. The feedback on my lifts wouldn't necessarily happen in real time. They would just be like, okay, fill out this survey on a scale of 1 to 5 on how you're feeling, and I'll adjust your program from there. If I wanted to go up in a tier, that $275 tier included a whopping 30-minute phone call 1 time a month. So that $75 was worth 15 minutes. Let's just let that sink in for an hourly rate. I am all for being appropriately compensated for the time and effort that you're putting in, but there needs to be some realistic charges with that, especially for the product that you are putting out. I get it. People are making a living off of their work. They need to pay bills, they need to buy groceries, etc. However, their prices need to accurately reflect the value of the services that you are receiving. And if someone is charging you $300 a month to coach or train you, then they better demonstrate every single green flag that I listed above and beyond. In my opinion, that coach was a very nice person. I really liked them a lot. I worked with them for almost 3 years. But when I got that email, I'm like, yo, this is out of my budget. And remember, you are not entering a marriage agreement with this coach. You can end your time with them when you feel you want to, or you feel like you need to, or you feel like you've reached the maximum benefit. And I recommend you communicate that appropriately, okay? If you don't want to work with someone anymore, don't be a red flag and ghost them. Explain to them and give a decent amount of heads up. Next month is going to be my last month with you. I'll make my final payment on the 1st. But unfortunately, my life is just kind of changing right now. This isn't something that I can prioritize as much as I want to, and I need to dial back. That's a perfect explanation to break up with a coach. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Muscles and Malarkey. And I hope that this helped shed some light on how to know if you need a coach and some good things to look for in a coach. If anybody has any other red flags, green flags, or further input for this topic, please send me a message. You can either DM me on Instagram at Muscles and Malarkey, or you can email me at musclesandmalarkey@gmail.com. Please leave a review and subscribe. I would love to hear your feedback. Yeehaw and yee claw, everybody.